All right, Max, what are we reviewing today? A fun one. I like this one. We got Family Style by Thien Pham. This is this is a really cool book for a couple reasons. One, it was focusing on I should put that in here too. Anyway, it's great to start a video and then immediately lose your track of mind. But this story is actually pretty cool because it is a parallel story in sorts to a very similar experience that we already read in the very first one of these I reviewed, which was the best we could do. But it's a similar story basically, where it is people leaving Vietnam and their immigrant story. Even though some of it was very similar to that book, I kind of liked it as almost like this just underlies how true of an experience this was in history, where like almost some of the pictures in this book were so similar to ones in The Best We Could Do that I just found that like fascinating. I hadn't run into that before in the graphic novel world, where you're reading these different big historical moments and you end up seeing like really similar stories paralleled by different families. But anyway, you're following Thien's family, and it's told from his perspective. You get to see him at different slices of his life. A huge chunk of the book is him in his childhood years. You see a bit of him in his teenage years, and then as an adult. As the title suggests, like family style eating, every single story in here does have like food is sort of the nexus point. It's the gravitational point a lot of these things go through. Without further ado, I'll jump into the patent pending scoring system. Strong thing overall. First off, on the characters, and to show you a bit of the art. So again, everything centers around Thien and his family. He's got a younger brother, and then his mom and his dad. I'm somehow no better at focusing this. I'll highlight again some of the. This will be a little bit more for the art section, but there's almost this exact same type of picture in The Best We Could Do when they're taking this boat over to Thailand, where they can where they can like take a reprieve. I think that like the family unit, it's the central story here. They're a very endearing unit. Something like in comparison in this book. The whole book, despite there being a lot of hard scenes, because again, this is like an immigrant story. This is like a story with a lot of risk. They're risking their lives to try to get to a better world in America. But like there's a positivity here. A lot of the memories, like him eating this rice ball while on the boat, are tied again to the food. You get the same kind of interesting scenes where they're all kind of at these camps waiting for their names being called for where they're going to be going next. I think like another cool element is like their family. You really get to know their family kind of well. Like the mom ends up being, I think, one of the heroes of this story. She sort of takes on ambitious challenges throughout this book. Like she's always looking for work. Even when in this camp in Thailand, she basically buys the stuff from another woman who is cooking food in this camp for other people stuck there, and that ends up being like really helpful for them and their family. She like pushes to launch businesses later. I really enjoyed getting to know each of the members of the family. I would say in order, you kind of get to know the main character Thien, and then his mom sort of becomes the hero too. There's this guy that ends up being super helpful when they move to America. They can't speak any English. This guy is like incredibly helpful getting them set up, letting them live with him until they're sort of set. So anyway, I really like the characters, everything from like their first jobs like in America to the cooking in the holdover camps in Thailand, to the entrepreneurial things they start once they get into America. Some really sweet scenes where, like, as a parent of young kids, you also appreciate sometimes when you, like, break the rules about, like, eating snacks and stuff to symbolize kind of, like, it's a special day. There's just a lot of, like, really cool, tender family moments. And it really does come off, I think, as like a very positive book, despite there being hard things. And this could be down to, you know, comparing again. It's hard not to compare it to a book where it's like a very similar thing. Immigrant story, but from Vietnam. But like, even though the parents obviously go through hardships, maybe it's the fact that they didn't go through as much trauma and they had a smaller family, and who knows, just down to the individual personalities. But like, there's just a lot of positivity despite the risks and despite some of the challenges they take. So I've probably given a good sense of the characters at this point. And I didn't mention this as much, but yeah, you also get to see like kind of like the interesting tension as Thien gets older and he's wanting to keep his like roots while also Americanizing, which is like a challenge. And then you get this all the way to like his present day challenges, which he's finding the political climate here very, very fraught and at odds with, again, his own very strong immigrant story. He ends up getting his citizenship in this story. It's kind of like the capstone, one of the capstones at the end of it, which I thought was like really, really cool. So anyway, I really like the characters, the main character, the mom, and the whole family unit. It's just something about it is very, I just really liked it. It was they drew me in. They were very endearing and positive overall, and you could just relate to a lot of it. I think the art, I already showed a ton of this, but I thought it was, again, a strong point. Like, the way things are spaced and colored, the way that the action sequences can really, he does a great job. Like the use of void space, minimum words during some of the most scary, risky, actiony moments, or just like transitions, I think, in a clever way. I think when there's the most action, there's the fewest words, and action can be in a lot of different respects, but I like that a lot. Even the most text-heavy pages are so readable. I'll get into the readability score as well, but that's quite good. I think like maybe the colors are a bit muted. It's a stylistic choice. It doesn't like pop off the page. And again, if I'm just comparing this again, just all of the works that I've read, is it my absolute favorite looking art? Like, no, but I think it's very solid, serviceable, extremely readable. I like some of, again, the stylistic choices they make during action and other things. In terms of the culture and history, hard not to give this a strong score. You get, again, people, in a sense now it feels like a cross-validated survey of what it was like to do this journey from boat to holding camp to kind of a random dice roll for what country you get assigned to with your family to live the rest of your life, as well as like, I think like, I just like really found it a powerful experience on both sides, seeing like just a lot of culture also on the American side. Like there's this cool, and I forgot to mention this for the character scene, but there's this really cool thing he does where you see a lot of like these like vertical lines in the text bubbles when the character just doesn't understand yet the language that's being spoken. And he has some real tension with his teacher at first, where he's like running away a lot, and I think it can be misperceived as like misbehaving. But then you see it's really just because he like quite literally doesn't understand the word. And like I just like loved when he finally started being able to form these things in his own head, and then he was like seeing in other bubbles of other kids. It's almost like in the cafeteria, then you start seeing like these words start to pop up and fill in. So I just thought it was so cool. You see all these cultural foods from the Vietnam side. That's a through line throughout this whole thing. A lot of his memories of like some of the most trying, troublesome, traumatic times, he's like connecting back to like rice balls or like fish and salt. And then at the same time, you're getting like the experience of, I guess, the gratification of being able to connect with the new culture you're in, like understanding the language, opening yourself up to appreciate the food. So I thought, and like all the teenage stuff that like an American teenager goes through, just a lot of like wonderful parallels, I think, between The Best We Could Do, and at the same time, like American Born Chinese has a lot of these types of like identity connections, like balancing both like old and new personas in a way. So I just thought it was a really cool blend of those kinds of like culture and history. And again, like the scale of it, you get both like what I would consider the big scale cultural things like war, immigration, widespread turmoil, that's sort of like the beginning parts, but then the smaller cultural stuff like fitting in at school, getting used to like a new palette of food, new norms and mores and all those things. So I thought it just had a lot of cool variety there, and like some just like wonderful moments of like a coming of age story as well. And then yeah, readability. I've sort of flown through this a couple times now, but like I just found this a really readable book. I don't think I did it in one sitting, so I couldn't give it like the max score. And I don't think, as much as I like the characters and the history, I think it didn't have that total vacuum of like I am like sucked into the story so much I have to see what's happening next. Like I think this is obviously a stylistic choice when like maybe the comfort and coziness of the food being the nexus point that everything gravitates around does also by nature alleviate some of the tension you feel in some of the stories where you're dreading what could happen next or excited or anxious about what's going to happen to the character because the stakes are high. So maybe this is just a trade-off that a little bit takes away from the readability. Like it's a safer book in some sense. And like nothing against that. I thought it was lovely and fun. But finally, the X Factor score. I thought it was like a 4 out of 10 because it's hard to give this too strong of an X Factor score, especially after reviewing a bunch of books around the immigrant story, and also coming of age and also identity. But I think that like I think there's still enough like really interesting moments here, like how like I'd never seen in quite the same way, like the like visually seeing someone like kind of understanding new language. I loved how that happened also in this like childhood perspective. The most similar thing I could think of was like Himawari House, where you have like various translations of the same thing in different languages in every bubble, which is just like an incredible labor of love. But like I love that. I also love the citizenship part in the end of this story. It feels very like bookended. He also answers some like questions about his own journey and various things at the end, so it's a little bit like breaking the fourth wall at the end. That's not altogether uncommon too in these books. They'll often be like stitched together various portions of appendices. Like I just mentioned this in the last book I reviewed of the Tato Rambo book, where like the last whole third of the book is like different newspaper sections and clippings and pictures that were from the real world that encapsulated some of this main character's story. So it's not totally unique, I guess, to have these like endings of the book which are a little bit meta or disconnected. But also then finally, I guess, the food element, and like that was like a through line again. I've only read one other book I think that I haven't reviewed yet, which kind of uses food as the point that everything keeps gravitating around. Similar to like Hot Comb or like Wash Day Diaries, where it's about like doing hair or something like that. I think in that sense it at least brings it up to like a medium type X Factor score. For a total score of 6.8, which is super strong. Ironically, without, I didn't look at the other score before I scored this, but they ended up, this and The Best We Could Do were exactly the same score at 6.8, just slightly different categories, slightly different scores. So I feel pretty good about that. I'll leave it here, but I would say this is a great book to pick up. Probably would take you 2-ish, 3-ish hours to read through, and if you want to solidify maybe some of these types of things, like read this back to back with The Best We Could Do, I feel, if you're so inclined, and that'll give a great sense of this type of a story. Anyway, I'll leave it there.